And the second part, after the flashes here, shows me items from a category validation, which have an uplink to the marketing requirements found by the first. So if I run the search, I get now just this one validation test case here. And you can have actually multiple of these searches nested inside each other. So you can have quite complex search expressions. The next one, we added a few searches to find items depending on who's the author, editor, or the last editor. So again, I prepared a search, which I'm going to explain. So I need to do it properly. I pasted something wrong. Yeah. So here's the search. And here I'm finding again marketing requirements, which were created by the user demo. So if I look, for example, at this first one and at the history, I can see the first editor was demo, or first creator. And then afterwards, Wolfgang changed it, and the last one is Paula. And I can actually find all these different people. So if I just want to find an editor, I can run a search and find edited by, and I get the same item. And if I want to know who was the last person to change it, the search expression will be last edited by. In this case, I don't have a category, but then I get exactly the same item. In a similar way, we can also have a bit more intelligent searches to find test cases or executed test. So here what I'm doing, I'm searching for the last executed test. So if I execute the same test case multiple times, then it will find basically the last instance, the last execution of these tests in that folder. And the last of these searches is the following. So here I search for items which are reviewed by one review. So first, maybe I'm going to show a review, which is in here. So if I want to find basically items covered by one review, or actually by all reviews in a folder, I can run a search like this. So all items covered by review 1. And that will basically give me that list of the items in here. So the next one, we added a few searches for dates as well. One of them is to find items which have been created since a certain date. That can be quite useful before release. So here it finds all the items created in the last 5 days. And the next one, actually, this one looks inside fields. So if the field called test date has a date which is within the last 10 days, it will be found. So that's in a test, this example here. Some other items, searches to find items with or without reviews. It's a bit similar to what I had before, but that actually looks at the items, not at reviews. So here I find all items which are in 1 or more reviews. And if I put in 0 here, it will find all the items which are not in a review. And I can also find items which have been modified after review. And again, it will be just a search expression like this. And obviously all these searches are documented, and you can access the documentation directly from the menu in here. And while we are in here, actually, what I just saw is we have also a list of the previous searches. So, and that is for each session. So each time you open your browser, we store all the reviews. And if you need to make all the searches, and if you need to make searches multiple times, you can just go back to a search you did before and it will be run again. So now if I run a search like this one here, it actually shows me underneath the number of matches. And also in that case that it finds some items in another tab in here. In the past, you needed to change the tab and run the search again. And now you can actually just click on that hyperlink and then it will show you all the results in the other tab. So, and now I'm actually already going to start with a bigger change. Unless there's already some questions for the searches, Eve.
I'm answering through the chat. No worries.
Okay, perfect. So now one of the new modules we have in this release is a branch and merge feature, and that works as follows. So I'm right now actually going to change the project. I'm going to go, oops, that's the wrong one. I'm going to go in this project here. So here I've got a project which can be one product which I'm about to finish. And sometimes while you're finishing one release, you already want to work on the next release. Or sometimes you want to implement a big new feature, but you don't want to already modify your design history file for a release because you're not sure if the feature is going to make it in the release. So in this case, what you can do is you can now create branches. For that, you go in the admin client. You go to that project which you want to branch. It's in here. And underneath the project, there's a create branch or copy. In here, you can basically say what the new project ID should be. We recommend to actually use the same as the normal ID and add a postfix like branch 1, and then that can be anything, the title. And the mode in here for this new method is make a branch connected to this project. And this will actually make a copy of everything in the project. If you want, you can include the history, or also if you include the history to make a branch in the past. But now I'm just gonna branch it as it is now. And that is actually a one-to-one copy of the other project. So now I'm going to open that new project. So that is my branch here. And here in this one, which you're going to refresh, I have my original project, my main line. Now, the first thing, what is different between a normal copy and the branches is the following. If I'm in here and I create a new item in main line, I don't put in anymore. It created here item with the ID marketing requirement 18. And if I now go in the branch and I create a new item, it will actually be the ID 19. So there's no overlapping IDs, and each item you create in either a main line or a branch will keep its unique ID. You can also, by the way, have branches or multiple branches of one main line at the same time. It always behaves actually the same. So now what I'm going to do next, I'm going to do actually some changes in the branch. So I just update one item here and save it. I delete another item in here. So marketing requirement 3, I delete. And maybe for this one here, I just add a link to another validation item. So now, as I said, the idea of these branches is that you make some changes in a branch, and at some point you put the changes back in the main line. And this is something you do in here in the main line, in the tool section. There's in the audit tools a new function merge. Here you select the branch. And then you get a list with all the changes. So here it tells me that basically the marketing requirement 19 was created in the branch, that I changed something in a branch, and I deleted something. For all of these changes, as well as no conflicts, by default, they will be applied. So they will be copied into the main line. If I want to see what exactly change is, I can here compare, for example, what changed in the main line. I see what the item was at the time when I branched, the current item in the main line, and what is now in the branch. And like that, I can also say I want to see one specific version, for example, this one here, the one which was deleted, or another one which was created. I can just open that in here. And that has no equivalent on the other side. The other change in here doesn't need any action because that was just an item which was created in the main line. So now here I'm going to select or leave the selection as it is to apply all of this. I do next, and now it tells me that the traceability changed. And again, it suggests to apply the same change in the main line. And here it tells me that an item has been created or moved to a specific folder, which I also just select. I do a merge. And now what it did, it actually updated the mainline item. And it opens in here the history, the merge history. Here I can see basically what changed in the main line. And if I go to one item, like the marketing requirement 19, which I created in the branch, it now also exists here in the main line. And that one, marketing requirement 1, that's the one I updated in the branch, and that was copied over into the main line. Now, after I merged, I can still continue to work in the branch. If I make a change here to marketing requirement 7, and I also change the same item in here, in the main line. Now, if I want to merge in here, it actually looks a little bit different. So here basically tells me there's a conflicting change because I changed it in the main line and also in the branch. If I compare it, I can see that again, what changed. And now it's actually up to me to make a decision. So I can either ignore the change from the branch, or I can say, take it and replace it. And then again, it moves me for the rest of the wizard. So when you do this branching and merging, there's actually lots of special cases. So you can delete something in the main line and change it in the branch or restore it in the branch. And for that reason, it's actually good to try to branch early and often and not very late and a lot, because it can get quite complicated. But everybody who's developing software actually knows about that. So that was a new module, the branching, and the next module I want to show is also a new module. And that one, I'm going to change the project actually in here.
Wolfgang, perhaps we should make a little Q&A session if you can, because there was actually a lot of questions regarding branching and merging.
Okay.
Anyone has a question he wants Wolfgang to answer right now on merging and branching? I don't think so.
Okay, so you just keep note of it, and then we can either get back on email or make one-on-one sessions.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, it's a very big feature, and indeed it's quite complex if you look at it. So okay, the next new module, that's a translation module. If I go in here, in this example, I added a category which is instructions for use. For example, if you want to record some risk controls, which are just warnings in the software or in the user manual. And here, what is important with these warnings, of course, is that you need to translate them in the language where you sell your device. But the same could be true if you outsource something, or you have some work instructions for people assembling your device, or doing some incoming inspections. Usually these people don't speak, or I mean, unless we are native English speaking, they don't speak English very well. And then it might be a good idea to translate these things. And how it works is basically you have a field like this one, description, which is in a basic language, usually it's English. And then you can automatically translate that in different languages. Now I did the French one. The French people can already read it, can do the same with German. And we use a service called DeepL for that. And the results are actually amazingly good. I mean, you still will need to review it, but even some specific terms which might only have a certain meaning in a context are usually quite well translated. I think they have currently like 30 or 40 languages. And I made some examples, most of it like simplified Chinese here. Of course, I can't read, but I assume it's also quite good. Good, let's continue. So the next feature will be a new dashboard. For that, I'm actually going to change the project again in here. And here the dashboard, that's something that was asked quite often, is basically to have an overview of labels set in some category. So here I've got, for example, for a doc category, I've got a label to see all these obsolete flagged documents or draft documents like that. The same thing you can also do inside a category or inside a folder. So if you want to see what is in a folder in here, you can also get just the content for a specific folder and see which labels are set. So, and back to my demo project in here. No, that's the wrong one. That one here. So now another very big feature, which is related to actually, I think the most of our tickets, is that people often want very specific trace tables or way to format the output. Until now, it was often quite painful and related to, I mean, it meant we needed to make some XSLT style sheets. And we actually now have a complete new engine to create reports. So for example, if I go in here, I have a document, and this document has a new section, which is of type custom, which is here, dynamic database section custom. And besides that, it works like other sections. So first I select the kind of main input. In this case, I selected marketing requirements. And then the other items by default actually covers everything in the project. And these are all the items which are taken into account if you do something in a document with traceability. So again, by default, usually it will be all of these items. So now what is new here is basically this little icon, and that's what we call the layouter. If I click on it, it opens my document with a preview of what it looks like. And then you can basically define, that I'm going to show in a bit, your own tables or sequential lists of items. And you can see here a preview of what you get if you basically select one of those predefined tables in here. So if I now select this one, I have the, for example, here I show the folders, and then for each item I show certain columns in here. And these documents, once I define them in here, I can actually download either as a PDF like this. It's actually also a new feature that we have a PDF viewer directly embedded now. So that's the same view as a PDF. Or, which is also nice, now I can, these tables I can actually download as Excel files as well. So in these Excels, they are actually just plain text, but it contains all the data and it merges cells according to what you want to see. So, and these layouts here, like this one here, they are actually defined in a very special project in Matrix. And that's a print project. In here, basically, all of these different layouts can be defined and can be used in multiple projects. So for example, here in this one, this example, basically you can define your table header. So if I make that, for example, red now, it will be red later on. And then you can basically define what should be printed in each column for each item. All of these are actually some other components to show cell ID, the item ID and the title, or maybe a subtable with all the tests. But I'm not gonna explain now in detail because it's quite a big feature again. For that, actually, we have a whole series of videos which you're gonna post. And down here is what I see for folders. So now if I make a little change, like I now just changed this one here, maybe I say it should not merge the item ID and I save. Then I can actually go back in my document and just click on it again. And now I can see here the red, and I can see how here now the marketing requirement 1 is repeated and this one is not actually merged as it was before. Okay, that was this new reporting engine.
Wolfgang, a couple of people uploaded in the chat just for you to know.
Again?
A lot of people say it's really like it's Christmas in July for them. So
yeah, until they need to learn how to do it. But for that, as I said, we have a couple of videos and we're also going to help and can explain it. I mean, it's for us, it's actually quite quick to make any kind of trace metrics document. Next one. So again, something about documents. I'm going to be back in my document here. Let's see, I'm going to change the project again. And now I'm going to look at doc 35 in here. So now this new feature we have in here allows us to actually make an audit trail with some specific revision or version number in here. And to do that, what you need is actually to have in this table a column of type revision. So it's not just a text, but a specific type. And then what happens with that is the following. I have now version 1 in this document, and it's already existing as a released document. If I now make a change somewhere, I save, and I try to release again, I actually get a warning or an error message, and it tells me that this revision 1 is already in use, which is in this document here. So usually what I'm supposed to do is actually, if I make a new release, I make a new version. I describe what it does. I save, and now I can actually create my new document. What you can already see is that it's putting this revision number in here. And that is done using that macro up here, which existed already in 2.2. But now the new thing is that you have this placeholder for the revision number, which is added in here. Another thing in these documents, now if I open that one, actually I can download the Word document. In here is that the same revision number can also be added in here. So if I do Alt F9, you can see here revision number 1, and that is actually done by a macro which is called mx doc property revision. So your old Word templates will not know about this. But again, we can help you and explain how to add this doc property, and it's also already in our FAQ how to add these properties to Word. That's a Word feature which is a bit painful as well. But if you've done it once for your template, it will work for all the new documents. When the next one, something completely different. We got quite a few questions about basically being able to sign something on some parts in an item. And we already had a feature which was quite similar. But now we added some new feature in here. Let me go to that one. And that is the gates. And the gates basically now behave like something with part 11 signature. So you know who signed it and when was it signed. And it's stored in the item and the history. And that means also if I now go in here and I want to sign something, I get my password. And actually I'm now signing as a member of the software engineer group. And I save, it basically will put my signature inside. And these signatures are also, or can be made visible in documents. So again, I'm going to load a document I prepared. And in here, I just have a list of items where I include my SREQs. And if I look at it, it will show basically down here my electronic signatures. And again, with the date and the name. These signatures in here, that they work like this, they need to be prepared. But that is a feature which is available in the UI. So if I go in here, item categories, SREQ gate, then basically you need to select that you need to supply a password to sign it so that it's part 11 compliant. And then you also need to basically have some printing options to make sure it's actually printed in your documents. But again, that is details for that are documented, and we can help you configure it if necessary. Another feature request we got very often, and that we actually refuse to do in the pure form, is that people would like to have email notifications if a new notification is created or if they need to sign a document or something. What we added instead is a possibility to have digest emails. And these you can configure in your profile. And that is in here. So you basically can have either a daily or weekly email, which shows you all your open notifications. So in that case, if I would get an email, either daily or weekly, would just tell me that, for example, I need to sign this document. And that's, in our point of view, much better than kind of tens or hundreds of emails which you get and which end up unread in a folder in your inbox. So the next feature in here, which I want to show, is something which is hopefully not needed at all, but can be very useful if there's, for example, a big fire in one of our data centers, which we had earlier this year. We now actually have an instant replication of the database. So here I'm now in a server which is the same name as my normal instance with a replication minus before. And what happens is actually if I make a change in this one, so now until now it's the same as that one. And if I make a change in here, the change will be automatically replicated in here. So if I update, the database will be automatically up to date. So that means if a data center burns down, we can actually immediately switch you over to the new system, and you will not lose any data or time. And besides that, of course, we continue making backups. But it's really just for to minimize loss or date loss. Now a change in the admin client. Something we got a few times as a question is if you make configuration changes or you are starting to set up your projects, from time to time you actually want to copy and paste complete categories. So for example, here, if I have this category, which is defined with a couple of fields, and if I want to copy it in another project, I can actually just say copy. I can select the new name of the category, and then I can select another or actually also the same project to copy it. And what it will do is basically it creates my new category with the same fields, and all the configuration of the fields are copied over. The one thing you need to still update manually or change is the traceability and all project-wide settings which might be used in your category. But just to copy all the fields, it's very convenient to do like this. So while we are in the admin client, some more things. In here, in the admin client, we have now the possibility in here to explicitly log out some users. And that will not only kill the session, but it will also release any write logs. So if someone is editing an item, goes on vacation, you can still log them out, and that will basically allow you to modify the items again. In this user section, we have also now the possibility to filter these tables, not only by users or projects, but also by groups. For example, if I have a list of project groups, the one I'm using now is I think demo ALM. When it shows me all these projects which are in this project group, and I can do the same with user groups. So if I select here whatever customer support team, it will show me only users which are in that team. And that feature is of course useful if you have very big groups or a number of people. It allows you to more easily configure access. So the next one in here, we see, if you're in some fields now, for all of the fields, you have a possibility to hide them in the UI. That might be or is sometimes useful if, for example, if you have an audit upcoming and you have some internal comments or some fields you don't want to show in the audit. Or if you have if you import some data and you have some legacy IDs or something, then you can, once you're done with your importing, you can just hide them and it will keep them in your database. And whenever you need to go back to them, you can just unhide them. Another useful feature in the client, if you have many projects, is that you can filter the project list in here. So if I, for example, say HW SW, I get all the projects with HWSW in the ID or the title. And in here, if you actually select a project, you can easily do some navigation from here. So you can open the project, which I did before, just by clicking on that link, or you can manage the user access without actually leaving the context in here. It's just some little convenience features, but that's typically the things people do quite often. Another feature request we got quite often actually is the possibility to change these project colors you see in here, and that you can do here in the project settings. So you can change it to whatever color you like. Another request we got often in the admin client is to be able to configure table columns with the UI instead of the JSON. So now if I go here to 231, let's see, where could I go to the software? In here, I've got a table, and down here you can now see the columns of my table. If there are some options, like for drop down to select the drop down, you can also do that in the UI. And if you want to add some new columns, you can just add them in here, and they will be added. So that replaces editing the JSON in here. The same is possible also in the test configuration. Now let's see. In the tests, so we're talking about tests, we now have the possibility to add some immutable identifiers to rows. So let's see if I go in here, configure that in here. And that means whenever I add a new row in here and I save, it will get a new ID. In the beginning, it will be actually the same as the row ID. But the interesting part is that here this number will not change if I change the order or if I add something new in between. And that basically allows you to actually refer to some rows. So I could say in here, see row 001. And that ID, that part, the first part, as I said, will not change. And the second number in here is actually quite useful. That's the revision number of the item when you saved. So when you modify a row, like that one, currently it's 04. And if I add something new in here and I save, the second part will be updated, and I know that this step is actually newer than the rest of my test steps. Now I want to show something about smart links. 6. So in these items, I have 2 smart links. The first one, the red one, actually is just red because the item does not exist or exist anymore. So it's a smart link which is actually broken. The second one in here is a cross-project link. And the thing which is new in here is that if I hold the shift key down, put the mouse over, and I have access right to this project here, I can see a preview. We don't show it if you don't have access rights, so it's just inherits the normal rights from the admin client. So now a few things about documents. Let's see. The first thing is that we have the possibility to have some kind of text explaining the importance of a signature. Again, that can be configured in the admin client, in the project settings, and then in the doc settings in here. So that's the text in here. If there's something defined, it will be shown with a little star in here. Another thing you can see in here, we have now the possibility to reject items. So instead of signing it, I can reject it. And in order to reject it, you have to provide a message. And once it's rejected, it's actually rejected by everyone. If you disagree, I mean, if you're a manager, you disagree, you can, of course, roll back to a version before it was rejected, and you can ask again to sign the document. Another thing you can see in here is actually if you have a signature meaning defined in your signature table. So if I go in here, I have basically here my author, reviewer, and so on in a column of type signature meaning. If you have these defined, you can actually show them in here in your signature, so you know why you need to sign a certain document. And that's again a feature which needs to be enabled in the admin client. That's the checkbox here. Another feature I've shown before is that basically now we have that embedded preview, which is actually cached. So the first time it will take a while to create the document, and the second time it's loaded immediately. So now for the redlining, we did a couple of improvements for redlining. If you're redlining, for example, with doc 39 against the sign item in here, it shows you two different sections in the redlining. The first one in here is actually a textual change. So in here, I see that the purpose box, a text box has changed, and I can compare them side by side. The scope did not change, so I just get one box in here. And here, that's a list of items. If I compare it textually, I get like this list with all the changes highlighted. And down here, I see a list of changed items. And in here, in this specific document, what I actually did in the document is that I included all the marketing requirements. And in the list down here, I can now see that 3 marketing requirements changed since I created my sign, but also that some system requirements changed. And these system requirements which changed were not actually directly included in the document, but somewhere they appear here, like here, for example, as references. And that is something you can select to show or not to show. So if you really want to show only the items which are completely included and selected, you select this checkbox here, and then it really only shows the items which have been included in the document. And this part in here, you can actually copy. So you can copy that list of changes. And once you copied it, you can again include it in another rich text box, I mean, in another document or in here, and it gives you the list of all the changes. I mean, it doesn't make much sense to have all the details because that would be unreadable. So another feature in our list, which was requested quite often, is a possibility to have default values for fields, specifically for tables. And that I can also show in this project here. If I go to my software category and I create a new item, I can actually see that the table here is already pre-filled. We have some data in column 1, some in this column, and some other in the third row. Currently, this configuration here needs to be done in the admin client. So if I go back in my configuration in here, in my table, I can see here my columns, and how it's configured until now is actually in the JSON. We might add in the future a UI if needed, but the UI will be quite complex, I assume. So how it works is like that. You add a field, initial content, and that you can do also for rich text boxes or other fields. And in this case, for tables, how it works, you specify the column, so column 1, which is that one here, then column 2, and that's the third column here. And then for each row, you can define whatever columns you want. And you put the values inside you want to pre-fill if you create new items. So now one thing we obsoleted, which is quite a big change actually, is that in the future we don't want to see our report category anymore. By default, it still exists, and we explain here how you can re-enable it. But actually everything you can do in reports, you can also do in documents. The only thing you cannot do in documents is basically to export all data in Excel or XML. But for that, we added a new tool, which is actually more convenient. So you can now export the data from inside the client in either XML or also as Excel from the UI in here. With export, you can also do in the admin client. If you select a project, you can directly export the XML from here. But as I said, if you, for some specific reason, still use reports, you can re-enable it. But it's actually better to tell us why you need it, and we can probably create a document or add a dashboard, which makes it easier and faster and more powerful. So that was already the list of the changes for ALM and QMS. The next thing I want to show is some specific changes for the QMS. Let me see in here. So I'm going to change the project to go to a QMS project. Yeah. That's not the one I want to show. I need to wait until it's loaded. Actually, I can start with that one. Here, that's basically we just to find it. We improved the training dashboard. And in the past, it was actually quite difficult just to know how these actions work. So how to create new trainings, how to onboard new users. And what we did now is actually that we created these buttons here, and each of it is a little wizard. So for example, if I want to have a report about the training, I can select in here by some users. I could select also some processes, and I see now a subtable in here. And if I want to create a report, I can click on that button. It shows me the training information by default from the last year. By default, the same users I selected here and the same processes which are selected here. And of course, I can still change that if I want. And now if I do next, I get my report. Here I get a preview with some information who did which trainings and which need to be done. And if I do next again, it copies it in the clipboard. And again, I can copy that in a document if I want to keep a record of that. The onboarding wizard is also a wizard where we here explain first all the steps. When I can select a new user, and with new user, I can actually add directly in here to some user groups, like that. And then it actually already shows me what training should be done depending on these user groups. And by default, they are all checked. And now if I say next, it adds the user to the table, which is not visible in here. And I can see for Polar all the new trainings in here. Like this, we also have a wizard to create new trainings. For example, after 1 year, you say, okay, you want to create trainings for all the items or the trainings which have been done for more than a year ago. That will basically also guide you through the process. So, but now the next thing in the QMS is a new dashboard. And here you can basically see for each publication when it has been published, so which revision of a process have been published in which publication. And that can be also useful if you want to see history of what has been published when. So in something similar, we had in the documents before, we actually also have in the publications. So I'm now going to open a publication in here and show a process. So we have now the possibility in the publications to actually show the revision number. That's basically how often you saved the item, and also kind of a version number which you enter by hand. And how that works is basically also by adding a table with a revision number in here. And again, the table needs a specific configuration with a revision column in here, which is defined in the admin client. And then actually the same thing happens if I want to make a change in here, or if I make a change and I want to approve it. I do it right now. Will actually complain that the last time it was approved, it was also revision B. So now I could still approve it by setting the label, or if I want to do it properly, I would actually say, okay, I made some changes and I describe these. And now if I approve it, it will go through without warning. Again, this needs to be configured in the admin client. It's documented, but you can also get back to us and how exactly to do that. Now, if I go back in my published site and I go to 23 in here. Now, if you have big images in your QMS and you click on it, they will actually be enlarged in here. So if you have big drawings, which apparently happens quite a lot, they will be shrink to fit on the page, but if needed, you can enlarge them to see all the details. Another block in here. We now also have a possibility to publish labels. For that, you need to configure a list of labels which can be published. And then if you set these labels, like here we have these different ISOs, then you will actually see them in here in the published page. Then something else which globally changed is that we moved the read and understood and training questions to the end. Because actually, if you do your trainings in Matrix, you're supposed to read the whole process before clicking on those. So it makes more sense to have it at the end. If not, you need to scroll back up. Another change in here is that in this filter here, you can either see all the processes for yourself, not filtered by user, or if you need to do trainings, you can say, okay, you want to actually see all the items for which you need to do a training. Okay, that one I gotta skip. That one I did. And actually, I think I'm now through with all the things I wanted to show. So if are there any more questions, any more things I should show or can show?
There was a question from Dan recently. He asked if you can delete a training for a specific person and specific item.
If you created a training, you actually have a list of, let me see. Yeah,
it's a special notification, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's actually just notifications in here. And if you created it, you will actually have all the trainings in here, and you can, I think with Shift, I also don't know how that works. You can actually delete them, yeah, in here. And then it will disappear. But maybe the best thing is to actually just create a new training.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so if there are not any more questions, then I thank everyone.
There's a question from Matthias. He asked if you covered the new dashboards, and I don't think you did.
I showed some dashboards, but actually we have a few more which you can deploy if needed. So I showed, I mean, we have dashboards in here and also in the other projects. We have some new dashboards. I'm not actually sure if, I mean, some of them we already deployed in between.
But perhaps a note for everybody on the dashboards. This is a feature that we can evolve over time, even though we don't change the version of Matrix, because all these dashboards are basically UI plugins. So if you have a very a very urgent need of specific dashboards with specific features, you can always ask, and it's possible that we can add it for you. It's only a UI plugin that we can put to your instance, so we don't have to redo a whole validation of the whole package. It's purely visual.
I can actually show another one on which we are working right now. Let's see, 1 second.
And Wolfgang, these global dashboards that you can add.
They are also still right now in preparation.
Okay.
We don't have anything useful to show yet. So here, that's another example which you're just developing. That's, for example, for a kappa project, you can get an overview over the status of your kappas to see how long they have been in a certain state. And these dashboards are actually quite easy to make if you know what exactly we want to show. That's it. So then I thank everyone.